Testing, testing. Mayor Beatty, can you hear us?
I can hear you, yes.
Good. I think we're just waiting for Councilor Castrovalli to return to chambers. And here he is. Ta-da.
With all four folks here, I just want to start by noting that the
Council
mayor.
President, hold on just a minute.
Okay,
Are you ready to go in there?
we're ready. Jump the gun.
Stand by. As soon as that red light in the window is on, we are on air.
Hurry, hurry. With that, I just want to note that Mayor Beatty is down with a bug, and so she is on Zoom for this meeting, and I'll be chairing the meeting. And with that, I call the 2,424th meeting of the Milwaukie City Council to order. This meeting is being held in person at City Hall and by video conference. The public may participate in this meeting by coming to City Hall or joining the Zoom webinar. The meeting is being broadcast live on the city's YouTube channel and the Comcast cable channel 30 in city limits. There will be opportunities for the public to speak during this meeting. If you want to address council, you may come to the City Hall or participate virtually via Zoom. If you're interested in speaking, please let staff know by filling out a yellow comment card for those at City Hall or emailing ocr@milwaukeeoregon.gov for those on Zoom. When it is time to take public comments, staff will monitor the comment cards, email inbox, and Zoom participants list and chat. We will take comments in the order that they are received and seen. Comments may be emailed to ocr@milwaukeeoregon.gov. We ask that all Zoom participants who intend to speak label their Zoom username to show their first and last names for the record. Spanish translation services are available upon request. The public is asked to request translation and other meeting accessibility services at least 48 hours before the meeting. For more information, contact the city recorder at 503-786-7502. Servicios de traducción en español están disponibles cuando sea solicitado. Se pide al público que solicite servicios de traducción y otros servicios de accesibilidad por lo menos 48 horas antes de la reunión. Para obtener más información, llama al secretario de la ciudad a 503-786-7502. Translation services are also available in other languages. Thank you. With that, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I want to start with a native land acknowledgement. The city of Milwaukie respectfully acknowledges that our community is located on the ancestral homeland of the Clackamas people. In 1855, the surviving members of the Clackamas signed the Willamette Valley Treaty, also known as the Calapoola Etc. Treaty, with the federal government in good faith. We offer our respect and gratitude to the indigenous people of this land. Announcements. I want to start by saying that you can join the North Clackamas Watershed Council, NCWC, for a tour of the Kellogg Creek Restoration Community Enhancement Project on Wednesday, April 16th from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. The walk will start at Milwaukie Bay Park and then follow the trolley trail. The tour will discuss the history of the project, community and ecological benefits, as well as recent updates. You can join a monthly event to volunteer at Elk Rock Island on Saturday, April 19th from 9 a.m. to noon. Volunteers at these events work to remove invasive plants and pick up litter. Wear your mud gear, bring gloves and a water bottle and your favorite digging or clipping tools. Volunteers are asked to meet at 19th and Sparrow to get started. City Manager Emma Sager will host an open door session on Friday, April 25th from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. in City Hall. Feel free to stop by to ask any questions, raise concerns, or just learn more about what the city is currently working on. No sign-up is necessary, and sessions are coming on a first-come, first-served basis. In celebration of Earth Day, the city, in partnership with the Historic Milwaukie NDA, the Rotary Club of Milwaukie, and the Milwaukie Parks Foundation, as well as other community partners, is hosting a volunteer event in downtown Milwaukie on Saturday, April 26th. Prior to the start of the event, prior to the start of the volunteer work, Milwaukie will receive an official designation as a Bee City USA for its work to protect pollinators and promote healthy habitats. The event will also include to decorate pollinator wings, numerous organizations with information tables, music, and spring weather. So come join in the fun. To help event organizers prepare, volunteers are asked to register by April 23rd using an online volunteer registration form. The Milwaukie Police Department is hosting a prescription drug drop-off and shredding event on Saturday, April 26th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Public Safety Building. Please have prescription drugs collected in a bag or a small box to hand off to volunteers. Sensitive documents for shredding should also be in a box or bag when you arrive. Please remove any staples or other metal objects from the documents to prepare them for shredding. The processors on site will accept 2 document containers of materials at no charge. Participants are asked to enter the Public Safety Building parking lot from Railroad Avenue and exit onto Harrison Street. For more information about each of these events and others, please visit the city's homepage at milwaukieoregon.gov or call 503-786-7555. Before we move on.
Mr. Council President, I wanted to add one more event. Sorry for interrupting, but because we don't meet until after the first weekend in May, I wanted to call out that Friday, May 2nd is the return of First Fridays. And it is also the night that I'll be giving the State of the City address. So I hope that people will come to downtown Milwaukee for First Friday and start off at 5 p.m. for the State of the City address. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Beatty. Any other event announcements before we move on? I've got one other. I was just visiting the historic Milwaukie NDA, and in that conversation, I mentioned these next 3 months, we had our first goal update in April, we're having one in May, and we're having one in June. We're setting our 3-month plan for our goals, our 3-year plan for our goals. If our residents want to get involved in that 3-year planning, I think this is a great opportunity to engage. So you can see that information on our city website and our calendar. With that, Mayor, I love when you read the haikus. Would you want to read this one?
Sure, I'd be happy to read the haiku. I appreciate Kelly Hudson submitting it. Pretty yellow blooms overtake our yard with color. Invasive, bye-bye. I wish that it was as easy to get rid of lesser celandine as saying bye-bye. It's kind of a scourge, but thank you, Kelly, for the sentiment. And I'm always looking for more haiku, so please send in your haiku to my address as shown there. Thank you.
If only we had an AP language or AP Lit and Comm student in the audience who was good at writing. And with that, we're going to turn it over to Principal Kellogg to introduce our Student of the Month.
Yes, thank you. You know, we were here multiple times, one right after the other, and I should have this down by now. I say this every time, but I am always really excited to have the opportunity to come before all of you and bring another one of our students. And this month, I'm bringing Erwin forth for you guys. And Erwin is a 4.0 student working towards an honors diploma, is on National Honor Society, has earned the Oregon Seal of Biliteracy in Spanish. And how many credits have you earned with that?
I'm working my 5th.
On the 5th, 5 credits in Spanish in that. And then has been a volunteer for Outdoor School. You just finished that up a couple weeks ago. And then has been in student government. Has taken AP World History, Pre-Calculus, AP Lit and Comp, AP Seminar, AP Spanish, AP Calculus, AP Lit and Lang, and been in yearbook. And then student government, like I said earlier, and has played soccer for 4 years and is an excellent soccer player. And then let's see if I can get this one to. And I wanted to, with this, Erwin is an outstanding student whose leadership, academic excellence, and character shine through in all that he does. A dedicated member of the National Honor Society and student government, and a volunteer for Outdoor School. Erwin is deeply committed to his school and community. He has maintained strong academics throughout high school while playing soccer all 4 years, demonstrating impressive time management and perseverance. Known for his kindness, his strong communication skills, and an outstandingly positive attitude. Erwin is always willing to help others and uplift those around him. His determination, his service, his academic strength make him a true role model and an asset to our school. Erwin, this is, being my 4th year at Milwaukie High School, and so I came in with you guys, and I feel like I really know our students. So this year has been so much fun bringing students, but Erwin, he was the first one that, met, how can I help? How can I, do you need anything? How you doing today? And always this kindness that shines through, not just to me, but everyone around him. Also, his Spanish teacher, Mr. Pranger, wrote, I've had the pleasure of working with Erwin through our advanced Spanish coursework for the past 3 years. In my time at North Clackamas School District, Erwin is one of my top and most developed non-heritage Spanish-speaking students. His success in my classroom is due to his intelligence, work ethic, innate ability with language, organization, and desire to be bilingual. He's been an absolute pleasure in the classroom and on campus, and I think the sky's the limit for him. And we all believe that, and we all are, well, I'm happy that you're graduating, and I'm happy to give you that diploma, but I'll be sad to see you go. If you want to talk about some of your plans once you leave Milwaukie High School, I'm going to turn it over to you. Yeah.
So not exactly sure where I'm going to go to college. My top choice was Cal Poly, but it's looking pretty expensive. So I'm thinking about a couple of East Coast schools, Hobart and Smith, which is in upstate New York, and Warren Wilson in North Carolina. I really just want to travel. That's what I'm looking forward to the most about college, I would say.
Do you think you'll do a travel abroad while you're in school?
That's the goal, yeah. Maybe twice, who knows? I have a lot of credits right now, so I don't think it will be too much of a setback to travel abroad multiple times.
And you have, all the schools that you applied to, you were accepted to, and so now you're just making that decision, and your deadline is?
May 1st.
So May 1st, they have to make that decision, so
Yeah.
no pressure. Yeah. Yes.
Well, Principal Kellogg, thank you for bringing us such another great student. And Erwin, thanks for being here. I'd love to pass it over to my other counselors to see if they have any questions. Do we want to start down here?
Thank you for being here. And I have a question that it's a deep one. What are classes like when they're not AP? No, you don't. It's rhetorical. It's okay. This is a really impressive resume. And I guess, what comes to mind for me is how overwhelming it can be to balance an academic, portfolio and extracurriculars. So what sort of advice would you have for students or, I don't know, public servants who are also trying to balance all the things?
I would say just, what's that saying, roll with the punches maybe? Just kind of go with it. I think if you spend all your time stressing about all the things you have to do, you're not going to get them done. You do have time to do it. There is time, and there's time to have fun as well. Don't overthink it. You have to believe it's going to work out.
It's a really well-balanced answer. Thank you.
You have a very calming presence. And I could have used that advice a long time ago. I could still use it today, actually, if you want to send me notes every once in a while to remind me. Very impressive, and honestly, it's we're lucky to have a high school here that produces so many incredibly young, talented individuals. You know, I'm focusing on the student government part. Any chance of removing the student part from that in the future? Potentially? We need better leaders.
I think that if I were to be involved in politics, it would be from the standpoint of an activist rather than a politician. I have strong feelings about politicians and the state of politics in the world and money in politics. I feel that I could be my most authentic self in the sphere of activism. Sorry
We
to
need those-
disappoint.
No, I mean, it's not a disappointment because we need those too. We need activism, and we need it now probably more than ever. So, again, I say this to pretty much every student that comes up here. You know, we're in good hands. I truly believe that, and you're just another round of evidence proving so. So our future is bright, and I appreciate not just who you are, but the family behind you who has helped mold you to be this person today. With all the distractions in the world today, you know, it's very easy to get lost as a young man, young individual. So thank you to the family, and thank you for just being an incredible person.
Counselor Massey, you want to take it?
Sure. Erwin, you've done great things at Milwaukie High. I'm pretty confident you're going to continue to do great things. Quite a long list of accomplishments, and I'm sure you're going to continue to add to that. I know that people do well when they have a good, solid support structure. And as Principal Kellogg was talking about all the things that you were doing, there was someone behind you who had a big smile on their face. And I would like for you to introduce that person.
This is my mom, Benny Foley. Different last names. But we are related by blood. Yeah.
And he told his dad not to come.
He was a little stressed. I thought it would be best for him to sit on the couch.
Well, he can watch it on YouTube later. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
I think
just,
that'll go
we want to acknowledge your all those cheerleaders who help make your life better and productive and fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
well done.
Mayor Beatty, can I pass it over to you?
Sure, Erwin, I'm so sorry not to be there today. This is like my favorite part of being mayor, is to do these, to meet the students and get a picture made with you and all of that. I am totally impressed with your credentials here. Several things on it resonate for me. I was a yearbook editor. I was, in National Honor Society. I did not play soccer. I wish I probably should have. The outdoor school is also something and the fact that you achieved the seal of biliteracy is great. And the testimonial you got from your Spanish teacher, I thought was really impressive. I don't guess I really have a question for you, but I will just say that I love your idea that starting into college is also starting into travel. I had the same feeling. I did go to college in upstate New York at Syracuse. So I think, the Finger Lakes and the Smith and Hobart and Smith are probably a beautiful campus and a cool place to go to college, but any of the places you might land, I think you'll have multiple travel opportunities, not just abroad, but even within parts of this country that you haven't seen. So I don't think you can go wrong. I wouldn't stress too much. In fact, I'll tell you how I picked a law school. I kept two of them I paid a deposit to 2 of them, and I finally just flipped a coin the last day that I had to decide because I couldn't decide. Anyway, I wish you all the best in making that decision, but I really don't think there's a wrong decision, and I am sure you will flourish wherever you decide to go.
Thank you so much. Love to hear that.
With all those classes, Erwin, you must have read a lot of books, and especially as the young activist you are, I'm curious if you have a recommendation of a book that's like really made you the person you are today that we should all read and check out, or that anyone watching should check out. What would you recommend?
That's a good question. I'm assuming you've all read 1984. I'm hoping. Of course, that is a really good read. A book that made me who I am. That's a really good question. I don't know. I think Game of Thrones is a really interesting read. It's very political. You get an understanding of what motivates people. I think we have this kind of view when we're younger that people are motivated by doing the right thing. And that's nice for children. But someday we do have to realize that that's often not the case. And I think that that's a really interesting thing in Game of Thrones. You hate the characters, you love the characters, and you understand that what they're motivated by, and you can forgive them for that, but also you can recognize that they're not just trying to make the world a better place.
I love that. I'll give you one guess who our Daenerys Targaryen is on this. She's the hero. She's like the good one. She does that.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm really glad that you came. I have one piece of advice for you, but if you're not going to Cal Poly, it might be out the window. The best pizza that I've ever had is at the Flower House down there. And if you ever find your way down there, it's well worth it. But I will say, as someone who really labored over the idea of like, where would I go to college? I think no matter what, you're going to be happy. You're going to look back in 4 years and say, I can't imagine my life anywhere else. And that, I think, should give you some confidence that you can't make a wrong decision. So really glad you made it here. Can't wait to see where you go from next.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, my script is blank, but I appreciate you all for coming, and I've got a certificate here for you as well.
Okay.
We're running just a little bit behind, so I'm going to call up Katie Gavaris to come up and give us our Earth Day proclamation. I'm happy to read it, but if you want to say any starting words to kick us off to celebrate Earth Day or whatever you want, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me here tonight. Good evening. I'm happy to read it, and I wanted to also just kick off by sharing a little bit about Earth Day. I know we had a little bit of foreshadowing with the announcements, and there's so much about how we're going about planning Earth Day that I think speaks to our city values and the amazing people we have in this community that I wanted to share a little bit of behind the scenes, and then maybe pass it over to Council President Anderson to read the proclamation. So we are celebrating our Earth Day this month, and especially on Saturday, April 26th, over at the Adams Street Connector. And in previous years, we've celebrated Earth Day. As a city, we've done a restoration event, and then some really great community partners have also hosted events throughout the month. This year, we are partnering with over 6 different community-based organizations within Milwaukie that have all hosted individual Earth Day events in past years. And we've come together to co-host one big event. And what we're able to put on and bring together our different communities that we've brought out to these events is really, really spectacular to see. So we will be having a restoration event in the riparian area over by Dogwood Park. And then we will have a place to do some planting and some maintenance on pollinator pathway gardens. And then we'll also be doing some trash pickup and beautification in downtown. And I think it shows really how we see nature and our stewardship of our natural resources in like the most dense part of our city, that we have this restoration to planting gardens and making just our built environment just as beautiful as our natural environment. And the last piece is that we are tying it in with our designation as a Bee City USA, and bringing in our love of pollinators and habitat preservation to our overall Earth Day and stewardship values and practices as a city. And so this event will have it all. And I think that speaks to the values that you'll share with us in our Earth Day proclamation. So thank you.
Thank you, Kitty. God, that's tiny font. I might have to read this one. Whereas the city of Milwaukie, the dogwood city of the West, is rooted in the natural beauty of the Pacific Northwest and values the health of its forests, waterways, wildlife, and the ecosystems that sustain us all. And whereas Earth Day, first celebrated on April 22nd, 1970, has grown into a global call to action to protect our planet through education, stewardship, and climate action. And whereas Milwaukie is committed to climate resilience, sustainability, and environmental justice, as demonstrated by the adoption of our Climate Action Plan, Urban Forest Management Plan, Comprehensive Plan, and the declaration of a climate emergency in 2020. And whereas the strength of our community lies in the partnerships, shared values, and everyday actions of residents, organizations, and youth working together for a more sustainable and equitable future. And whereas the city of Milwaukie proudly recognizes all who protect and preserve the environment and climate through participation in Earth Day activities by taking a proactive role in the protection of our community's precious natural resources. Now, therefore, I, Will Anderson, Council President of the City of Milwaukie, a municipal corporation in the County of Clackamas, in the state of Oregon, do hereby proclaim April 26, 2025, to be Earth Day in the Dogwood City of the West. In witness whereof, and with the consent of City Council and the City of Milwaukie, I have hereunto sent my hand on the 15th day of April 2025.
Council President, can I just offer a quick bit of Earth Day trivia? As a proud Camas papermaker, a similarly sized community across the river, I want everyone to know that the first Earth Day was coordinated by Dennis Hayes, a proud papermaker himself, a Camas High School graduate. And the second high school in Camas is called Hayes Freedom High School after Dennis Hayes. So Earth Day has roots very deep in the Pacific Northwest. Go papermakers.
Nothing more environmentally friendly than a paper mill. After that snide comment, we're going to move over to our community comments. This is the part of the agenda where council will hear community comments on city business that is not on the agenda. Before we move on to Emma Sager providing some updates, I do want to say, make sure you get your yellow cards in. I see we've got Andy and Mike coming to hear about our open container laws. We don't have comments at that portion, so if you want to come speak, do that. And Ronell, if you want to speak, we'd love to hear from you.
I do think procedurally, Council President, that if the folks want to speak on that agenda topic, you could, as presider of the meeting, take comment during that agenda item. That's typically how we've done things. When there's something on the agenda that folks are here to speak about, we use this period for folks who want to speak about something not on the agenda.
Well, that sounds good. If you want to double dip, don't try it. Before we start, Emma, is there any follow-up from the April 15th comments?
Oh, there is. Thanks, Council President. And just a quick note that the last regular session was on April 1st, and then I took off for a vacation after that and came back today. So all of these notes have been prepared by my wonderful Assistant City Manager, Joseph Brelio. Thank you so much, because we had a pretty jam-packed community comment section at our last meeting, so lots to respond to. One of those comments was from Rod Smith. It was about his recent conversations with Councilor Khosrowshahi and the owner of Pit Stop Coffee. Rod mentioned in his testimony a draft ordinance that has been shared with the mayor and Assistant City Manager Brelio regarding the idea of a 90-day notice requirement for no-cause commercial evictions. This, I believe, has been put in the packet or circulated to all of council. If not, we can absolutely make sure that happens. And if this is something that the council would wish to entertain or explore, then that is something that you could add to your forecaster in the procedures that we have for that. We had one other comment that was just nice comments from Nicole Madigan about council's recent statement on equity and inclusion. And then the majority of community comment was brought to us by Renelle Coburn, and Renelle's in the audience again tonight. Hi, Renelle. On behalf of several of her neighbors in the Ardenwald community about some parking and traffic concerns and questions on 29th Avenue, where there is a proposed middle housing development that has had a pre-application conference with the city. Ms. Coburn provided very thoughtful and detailed testimony regarding a number of concerns on 29th, many of which stem from the street not being fully improved, while we're going to see, or likely will see, increased development and density occur, primarily from the state mandated middle housing requirements. I will say that every city that we are aware of in Oregon is grappling with how best to manage middle housing developments, given the intentional limitations that are put on jurisdictions around things like parking requirements. So this is not just a Milwaukie unique challenge, and something that I know a lot of jurisdictions are grappling with. Ms. Coburn offered a few specific questions and ideas in her testimony that I want to try to address. I'll also say that, so it's not to make you have to sit here and listen to me for a very long period of time, I'll put a written response into the record for this meeting that you can all consult later. So there was sort of a suite of questions and comments about the inadequate right-of-way infrastructure on 29th, and sort of some asks on could the city scrape and gravel along parking strips or add berms, these kinds of things. It is definitely true that 29th is not a fully improved street. The city does sweep a section of the street about every 6 to 8 weeks, and we do provide maintenance for the first 2 feet from the edge of the pavement of the road. For areas outside of this 2-foot strip, these areas are maintained by the adjacent property and can be improved during capital projects. 29th was last slurry sealed last summer. The city right now does not have funding to increase maintenance beyond that level that I just stated. Ms. Coburn did ask about fee lock, or fee in lieu of construction, and the ability to use those dollars for this type of work. Fee lock is generally, as the name implies, it's used in lieu of construction. So it's really utilized for capital improvements. Now, this raises some kind of an interesting question for us of where does the line between maintenance and capital improvement fall? And it's a question that I will be honest, I think we're discussing still internally among our public works teams, and sort of how we would, as a city, want to define that. So then the second question that Ms. Coburn raised was, is it possible to require that developers of these kind of middle housing developments, especially on unimproved streets like 29th, that we require them to do fee lock instead of potentially doing a right-of-way improvement? This is a really interesting question as well. So per the city's public works standards, this is a quote, new sidewalks with curbs are required for any development requiring a development permit. The location of the sidewalk within the development will be determined in the development review process. This is a pretty common thing, again, among cities. I will also totally acknowledge that that can lead to what some people call the sidewalks to nowhere, the little patches of sidewalk, that you see places. The theory or the philosophy there is that that is how you build a more comprehensive sidewalk network over time as development and redevelopment occurs. But we also know, and Ms. Coburn adequately said, there's no sidewalks currently on 29th anywhere. So it would really be a sidewalk to nowhere, and you'd not see that kind of continuation for many, many years. The TSP update, which we heard about during the work session, is going to provide better clarity about the right treatment types for 29th. Right now, 29th is a local street, according to our TSP and our public work standards, would still have that sort of sidewalk requirement. But we have an opportunity through this TSP update to look at, how do we more clearly clarify what kinds of improvements really would be required. And this then takes us back to FELOC. So FELOC absolutely could be something that we look at allowing in this situation. Generally speaking, we prefer developers do an improvement when they build, because with a FELOC, you're giving us money at today's rate. And then if we can't come back and do an improvement for a while, inflation can happen, and then that money doesn't go as far. But as I said, we're looking at sort of where within the sort of maintenance to capital improvement spectrum would we draw the line? And so how quickly could we be getting out to do improvements? It's a long way of me saying I think that Ms. Coburn raises a really interesting point and idea. FELOC is at the discretion of the city. We can utilize it as a tool for a number of reasons that are called out in municipal code. Ms. Coburn raised some concerns about the increased potential for blocked mailboxes and walkways. We don't currently have an ordinance that regulates and enforces parking near mailboxes. Several jurisdictions have chosen to regulate this. But that's, I think when you're considering whether or not that's a policy move you want to make, it's also how can we realistically enforce it? Do we have the capacity to do that? If residents are not receiving mail due to cars parked in front of a mailbox, the city's general practice has been to encourage residents to reach out to USPS to ensure that they are delivering the mail correctly. And then according to the USPS website, we found that they say that the city carrier should get out of the vehicle to make delivery if the mailbox is temporarily blocked by a vehicle. But we can look into this more if this does become a problem on 29th. And finally, there was a last suite of comments about street utility trailers being parked in the right-of-way. The city prohibits abandoned vehicles, including trailers, and disallows RVs and boats to be parked in the public right-of-way. The trailers that I think are in question right now have not been deemed to be abandoned per our code, but there is certainly room in our code to better define and regulate these scenarios, and that would be something that staff would be happy to provide some proposals around if council would like to direct that. I think that's what I'm going to say verbally for now. I'll put more in the written comments. I just want to thank Ronell again for coming and providing testimony, and I'll be quiet now.
Thank you so much. That was comprehensive. And Ronell, if you have any other comments, we've got a yellow card here, so you feel free to fill it out. But that sounds great. For the record, I see Scott hopping in. Ronell just said that she had connected with city staff and is excited to move forward on this. So I appreciate that. I'm now going to read the rest of the script. For those in person who wish to speak, please submit a yellow comment card found on the table at the back of the chambers. If you're on Zoom, use the raised hand reaction to alert staff you wish to speak. And when instructed to, click on the microphone button to unmute yourself. If you're calling in through Zoom and would like to make a comment, dial *9 to raise your hand. You may also submit a comment via email to ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov. Before you make your comments, please state your name and city of residence for the record. If you'd like the city to follow up with you, please submit your contact information to ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov. As council has other business items on the agenda this evening, speakers will be limited to 3 minutes each. Because information provided during community comments may be new, this is not the time for discussion. The city manager will respond at the next meeting to comments that require follow-up. With that, I only see one yellow comment card from Mara Reynolds. If you want to come up, we would love to hear from you. Pick one and yep, you can click the mic and turn it on.
Hi, thank you for having me. Thank you for what you do. I love living in this city. My name is Mara Reynolds. I live right down the street on Main Street. I've been here for about 5 years. I moved to Oregon to graduate from Reed College. And I have been meaning to come talk to you guys for a number of different reasons for the last couple of months. And they've all gone out the window because of something that I witnessed this morning. This morning, I woke up to the sound of our local police yelling, beating, tasing, and ultimately putting a hood over a man, forcing him into a cop car, and taking him away. I didn't see him be read his rights or be formally charged with a crime. And he had no shoes. He was unable to identify himself. And as far as I can tell, he stole some food from the gas station. My background is in education. I worked in garden education for a long time, and I now work as a podcast producer of a long-form audio podcast called Gray Area, a show about justice and redemption. I happen to have worked with a number of people who have been on all sides of the criminal justice system, and I'm not here to speak ill about it. I think there's a lot of really potential good that it can do. But this is not meeting the needs of our community. In education, we say that misbehavior communicates unmet needs. And I'm not trying to speculate on the misbehavior of these cops or this individual, but the response that I saw is not an appropriate allocation of our resources to meet the needs of our community. It was horrifying to wake up to, and it will stay with me the rest of my life. And as far as I can guess, there's probably no one who's going to be representing this person. I hope I don't have to go into why witnessing this today and this week particularly is so alarming. And I would like to encourage you to be sure that our local police department and our county sheriffs are not working with or entering into agreements to cooperate with federal law enforcement agencies. I won't take any more of your time, but if you'd like to talk more to me, I'd be happy to, and I'd be happy to share the video that I recorded as well. Thank you.
Thank you for coming today, Mara, and I'm really sorry that you had experienced that.
Yeah,
I look forward to Emma following up about this. And I do want to say our state law prohibits our local law enforcement from coordinating with ICE, and our chief of police, who's sitting back there, sent out a statement saying that we will not coordinate with ICE in any way.
I'm happy to hear that.
But I do hope to hear back from Emma and look forward to hearing more about this. Yeah, thank you for coming.
I had hoped to come here to talk to you guys about things like community gardens and supporting small businesses and, you know, supports to, my job just got cut from NEH funding. I'm worried about my dad who is disabled. I'm his primary caregiver. That's why I'm still masking. You know, there's a lot of other things I'd love to talk to you guys about. But this really blew it all out of the water this morning. So thank you.
Well, thank you for coming. And like Jennifer behind you, you can come as much as you want to city council. So feel free to come back. We'd love to talk about something else too. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Scott, are there any folks on Zoom who'd like to comment?
We do have a Zoom audience tonight, and I see no hands raised, and I have no other yellow cards.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, with that, I think we'll move outside the community comment portion and move on to the consent agenda. Today's consent agenda includes minutes of the City Council from March 4th, 2025 work session and the March 4th, 2025 regular session, and a resolution extending the term and end date for members of the Transportation System Plan Advisory Committee, or TSPAC. Does any council member wish to remove a consent agenda item? Hearing nothing, I'll entertain a motion. From our starboard side.
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
I second.
Councilor Stevensford moves to approve the minutes as presented. Councilor Khosrowshahi seconds. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say no. The motion passes.
Okay, Council President, can I be a total parliamentary procedure nerd right now?
Yep.
I believe Councilor Stavanger said the council minutes.
Oh, sorry.
which
Oh.
may not have been inclusive of the second item. I apologize.
I'll entertain a second motion if we want to approve anything else.
Oh, geez. The consent agenda, is that what you're looking for?
You can say item RS or RB, 6B, sorry, 6B.
Okay, I move to also approve item 6B.
I second.
So moved and seconded. I'll see all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed say no. And with that, it seems like we've passed our consent agenda.
Thank you.
Okay, now we get to move to the meat and potatoes of our meeting tonight. We're going to be talking about our downtown open container conversation. We're going to have Police Chief Ryan Burdick come up and talk and present a little bit about this. So if you want, you can come on up and we can play the interlude music as you walk on over.
Chief, did you want me introducing this or you want to just take it away? I'll do a very quick intro and then hand it over to Chief Burdick. Council, thank you for asking that we put this back on the agenda. Back in, I think it was December, we had our first part of this conversation. This was prompted by some calls from our business community, a couple members we have sitting here tonight. Thanks for being here again, guys. Interested in whether the city wants to explore ways to allow either open container policies or events, or ways that folks could, with an alcoholic beverage, kind of traverse downtown and help patronize local businesses. Sort of what would be the option set that we could explore here in Milwaukee. Our first conversation was sort of focused more on the, I don't want to say pros and cons, but the considerations and opportunities of a topic like this. We got direction from you all to proceed forward, looking at more specific ways we might be able to operationalize this. We had a lot of follow-on conversations between our police department staff, our code enforcement staff, our events staff, and economic development staff to explore this, and are really kind of honed in on this idea of an option through our event permitting process that we might be able to explore. So the chiefs can talk a little bit about that, about sort of what that could look like. Again, some of the considerations and opportunities that that idea might present. And then what we're really, I think, looking for from you tonight is direction on where to go next. Should more staff time be spent to kind of further flesh out this idea and put something specific together, given the considerations we present tonight? Or is there something else you'd like us to do? So over to you, Chief Burdick.
Thank you, Mayor Baby, Council President Anderson, and Councilor. This is a pretty involved topic. We started to get into a lot of different areas, working with Events and Management Coordinator, Code, and our partners at OLCC. This is a great opportunity, but it does have some challenges associated with it. Personnel, how many people would we dedicate to a large open container zone downtown? Alcohol monitors, a combination of police, security, other city staff, the physical structure, the logistics of blocking off different sections of roadway, the financial side, reimbursement rates, if it's city staff, or how all that would come together. When we first started talking with OLCC, it created additional questions. I don't have a final answer for you as yet. We need to go back to OLCC and to get some additional comments from them. They were looking for more specifics, the actual what zone are you considering. There is an exhibit of a map that we put together for a very large area downtown. And then some of the OLCC's concerns as part of that conversation. Essentially, if would this be one group or two groups? OLCC has pretty specific criteria that there has to be one promoter, one person that assumes responsibility, one person that carries the requisite insurance, all those type of conversations. Lanes that I don't necessarily travel in frequently, so we're definitely following up on that. They also provided us some background for other cities. Eugene had attempted to do an open container zone, but there were some challenges to the openings in terms of exits, their ability to control it. It's one thing to have like a beer garden or something specific with fencing. If you start to get into a bigger area, that gets much more complicated. The cost expense aspect of something like this would probably be significant. You're probably looking at a floor of several $1,000s in staff costs to help coordinate, block off potential roadways, the additional requirements of signage, other physical barriers. The noise and nuisance issues associated with this would also definitely increase if we had a very large zone, or open container zone with a lot of people or a large event. And then the legal and liability concerns. When we started looking at this, one of the go-bys we looked at was when NCPRD does events that are alcohol related, what kind of insurance coverages are they looking at? And that we would do something similar. So one of the things that we're looking to do is to come back again after providing OLCC a very specific, this is the map, this is what specifically we're proposing, to come back and provide you additional information. We do want to continue with the current event permitting process. That's fairly straightforward. We want to make sure it's very business friendly, that there's not a high threshold for communities to hold different events through Milwaukie. But like I said, this did get into some areas that I don't normally travel in, so there is some follow-up. We'd want to do a PowerPoint or bring you something a little more specific when we come back.
And so just to clarify, I mean, I think we want to answer your questions tonight. As the chief said, we've got a few open questions as well, but I think our sort of rough draft proposal, we're funneling this down from a big universe of options to something more specific. Where we're at now is if this is something you want us to explore further, it'd be something that as someone is applying for an event permit in the city, they would say, I want to activate the open container zone. And then what would that entail? Today, if you want to host an event downtown, it's free, unless you want to close the plaza. This, we're looking at probably having to charge a fee to cover some staff time, having to require much more significant insurance requirements, matching what NCPRD does for the parks. And then also we kind of have this big question mark of, even with all of that, will OLCC allow it? And we need to go back to them with a proposal about that. But so that's the current, draft proposal in front of you would be through that event permitting process, we would be activating this zone.
Okay, thank you. I think what we'll do is go down the line, answer some questions, and then maybe afterwards hear from the community about what they're thinking here too. But do we want to start, if we did motions here, do you want to start over here, Councilor Massey?
Yeah, thanks for that, Chief. I know that this is preliminary, but could you just give me a flavor for about how big the zone is?
So the zone that was contemplated was significant. You're down to the food carts to the south, all the way north to Scott Street, which is just north of City Hall here.
But contained to Main Street only?
Main Street and 21st.
Hey, Scott,
21st.
could you pull up the map from the packet?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a map attached to the.
I see it now. Okay.
We looked at a few other kind of zones that we have mapped, like our no skateboarding map or some other things that we've looked at and kind of carved some things out of it. I mean, I think it's important from our standpoint that it wouldn't include the library or Scott Park for, given the presentation you had during your work session. I just think we already have some challenges with folks experiencing some substance addictions and that we wouldn't want to enable open container use there. You'll also see it doesn't include Milwaukie Bay Park, I think really from that kind of enforcement and safety issue, and crossing McLaughlin with open containers, I think would be something challenging from our perspective.
Councilor Stafford?
I'm just looking at the map and, I mean, I understand the reasoning around not including Milwaukie Bay Park. Are there, can you give a little bit more definition around how the specific boundaries of the zone were determined?
So I think it was to encourage, essentially, you could create a loop on 21st and Main Street.
Okay.
And I think the idea or the intent or the guidance that we got was that how do we facilitate people visiting all the businesses in downtown Milwaukee? And we went from that point.
And so if an organization or even a private entity were interested in applying for this permit and they checked the box, they would have to have liability insurance to cover that entire swath of downtown?
If they wanted to activate the full open container zone, we can activate beer gardens right now.
I see.
And that's just a negotiation between us and the permit applicant, and that requires, more like specific fencing and alcohol,
Yeah.
but that's something we do today and we've done for many events. This was more, I think what we heard from our testifiers last time was this interest in really activating down Main Street walking traffic, and that's why we were proposing a full zone. But yes, that would come with a decently hefty price tag to ensure that full zone.
And that's not something that would be covered by the liability insurance that the neighborhood associations currently hold for block parties and things like that? would it?
Don't believe it is, no.
Would it be something that they would be able, I mean, I'm kind of wondering about the accessibility of being able to do something like this and then the risk mitigation of something like this and trying to figure out how big an operation it would need to be.
We can come back with some comparisons between those NDA thresholds and the event threshold, or what this would require. But we already were finding the NDA insurance policies weren't covering alcohol-based events in NCPRD parks. So the concerts were having to go alcohol-free, those kinds of things,
Yeah.
because those limits were higher. I think, the difference between like something like this and a beer garden too is like, we're not proposing this all gets fenced. We'd probably put some signage up in some key points saying like, the boundary of the open container zone. But there's more liability with this because you aren't gonna, you have to rely on folks to kind of know those boundaries, or at least have staff, code enforcement or law enforcement staff out there patrolling the boundaries and helping make sure folks stay within that area.
Yeah. Yeah, the line of sight alone would be a logistical nightmare. I realize we're also not making a decision tonight, but I just want to make sure that folks who are paying attention or here in the audience know that that my family owns a business that's within this zone. So I just want to make sure that that's on the record officially.
Thank you, Councilor Kusarbati. Any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. I'm a little curious. Like, this zone does not seem natural if you're like intuitive for a person to follow along with. And I'm curious why the inclusion of specific buildings, but the exclusion of others, why that approach as opposed to just the streets and more a clear-cut box.
So we were trying to include businesses as they come recess back from the streets to include that. So that essentially they could walk and go into businesses.
Okay. If we did not include those businesses, would they still be covered by the liability insurance? I guess I think part of what I wonder here is like you're forcing these businesses to be included in the open container zone when they might not want to be.
Sure.
And so I'm curious if we drew the line just on the street, what implications that might have.
It would definitely make it logistically easier,
Okay.
I would think. The insurance part of it does get extremely complicated though. So I don't have a perfect answer for you.
And perhaps Justin could weigh in. If you're not a part of the open container zone, if you're B-Side Records, you're not a part of the open container zone. So someone doesn't come into your store with a container of alcohol. If someone breaks something in B-Side Records after being inebriated on our streets, would they be covered by that liability still?
Well, it depends. on what the facts are around that. I would also say that under the proposal, I believe that an individual business, even if within the zone, has the right to deny people from coming in with alcohol. So I think, your hypothetical is probably too hypothetical.
Okay.
Like, it kind of depends on the facts. Like, if somebody meanders in there and has had too much to drink and they're in the activated zone and they break something, they could potentially be held liable. And I would suppose, that liability could spread to the permit holder and their insurance policies, depending on how grave the damage was, if that business was an active participant. But again, I think this is really uncharted territory in a lot of ways. So I'm not sure how the insurance and how the liability would break down.
If this is the direction we go, I would be curious, why not include the 1847 food park that will likely want to be a part of this? They're a little bit farther down on the other side of Scott Street. So if this is the approach, I would say that tweak might be merited. I could also see just a logistical ease and cutting it off at the businesses so it is just the length of Main Street. I guess a question that I have, and maybe the people who come and comment can comment on this as well, but how much would the total, like a ballpark expense of a permit like this be? And do you think, I struggle to commit staff time to something that people wouldn't actually buy because it's so expensive. And I'm just curious how much you think a permit or insurance might cost.
So the insurance, we did some comparisons with NCPRD, but the OLCC permit, truly, I don't know what that would cost. The NCPRD would be a policy, this would be similar to NCPRD. And that policy has a minimum $2 million occurrence, $500,000 liquor liability coverage, and a $3 million aggregate total coverage.
So help me, I will admit, I'm no insurance expert. Does that mean someone has to put down $3 million or?
No.
Can you walk me through what that would actually look like?
I would probably say in the neighborhood of like a $5,000 or $10,000 amount would buy you that coverage, or it could be more. I'd have to follow up on that.
Okay.
But it wouldn't be a $3 million.
Okay.
Just looking through some quick emails, our event coordinator who has kind of helped other applicants look at this for when people are applying for an NCPRD permit in a park. They've been able to find some, insurance policies that are like $400 for a couple hours in a park that meets those thresholds. But that's a park. And I don't know then if you multiply that across, multiple city blocks, if you are getting up into those thousands that the chief is talking about. I also mentioned, we currently don't charge for event permits, except if you want to close the plaza. The way that when council adopted the fee schedule around the plaza closure fee, that was based on, a formula around staff time required, because you have to come out and take the bollards out. We would do a similar type of calculation for something here. I can't remember, Chief, but I think it would probably be another kind of $500 to $1,000 charge that would have to cover the additional code enforcement and law enforcement time just for the enforcement of those things. And again, I want to make sure we kind of come off like the negative Nellies here. We could not be more thrilled about the activity we're seeing downtown, and we love the passion for creating more activity. We are just trying to be transparent about the parameters we'll have to think about to make sure this is successful and safe for everyone as we consider ways we can further activate Main Street.
I appreciate that. So what I'm hearing is it could be potentially $11,000 for a permit in this zone. And so I guess the question then is, does this seem like a realistic expense people would want to bear or not as we think about staff time? I see Mayor Beatty, your camera is off. You are ready to talk. Do you want to take it away?
I just had some clarifying questions because I agree you should go to public comment before we get into what seems like deliberation. But I just wanted to understand some things better. And the first one is, do I understand correctly that this map, that OLCC is asking for us for one map, and that needs to be the largest extent of what the zone would be, but do we have to always engage the full zone, or could we engage some smaller subsection of it if we got to agreement on a map?
So I think you could do, you definitely could do a smaller zone. I think the idea also was to create this big area so most or all the downtown businesses could have that benefit of increased foot traffic. But I'm sure we could come up with an alternate map. And then what was the other part of your question?
Well, I mean, but my question is, do we have to just have one map? Or can we have our biggest scale map, and then as events come to us, they can scale it back. They don't have to do the full map. That's my question.
I think, Mayor, we can explore that with OLCC. I think that the slight challenge with that is then the infrastructure you would put in place to enforce that zone. So I mentioned, we had talked about some signage, some permanent signage that could go on the edges of a zone like this. I think if you start to shrink it, then we might have to start requiring fencing or signage that it states this is the edge of the open container zone. Definitely not out of the question. Again, we do this for beer gardens or, stretches of a street festival. We could definitely explore that. But I think if you wanted to really call it the open container zone, that might just get a little complicated in terms of how clearly we can sign it to the public.
Well, and there are other communities, like Louisville, Kentucky. They have an area called 4th Street. It's a large outdoor. They've got permanent paint markings on some of their downtown blocks that denote this entertainment zone that or open container zone that we're trying to go for.
Sure, but I don't know the Louisville example, but thinking about New Orleans, they allow it all the time, right? It's not for special events. I guess I didn't realize when you were talking about signage, you were talking about permanent signage, because I think, putting on my lawyer's hat, I think permanent signage is a terrible idea, because then people expect there's open container between events. But anyway, I wanted to understand more about the Eugene example. So in your staff report, it said they just wanted to open up a sort of a courtyard that opened into the street, and they couldn't get to agreement with OLCC on that?
So it sounds like White Captain Cheragino reached out to talk to someone from OLCC. And this was an example they provided where essentially there was a large area downtown, and that it wasn't able to be fenced off or marked sufficiently to OLCC, and so therefore they denied the city of Eugene this area. The size of the courtyard, I'm not sure, but it sounds like it was a sizable area that they were trying to go for, and that just the logistics behind marking the area off was something that OLCC ended up not approving.
And do you have the sense that Eugene's still trying to explore some option, or is Eugene just given up?
I think they gave up. I think they tried this and then it didn't work. And so I think they're moving on.
Okay. And then the thing in your report about Hood River, I found fascinating, that OLCC says Hood River people have to stay in their, have to stay where they have to only take the alcohol where they bought it, because that is not what the mayor of Hood River thinks. That is not apparently what the police department in Hood River thinks. So I found that very fascinating. And yeah, I don't know what's going on there. And then, well, I think you covered the insurance. I had some questions about the insurance, but I think between you and Emma, you covered the insurance. Yeah, it is. I have been involved in buying insurance for park events that don't involve alcohol. I've not been involved in buying insurance for park events that do involve alcohol. So I don't really have any light to shed on that. But what Emma said about the $400 for a park concert sounded, the right ballpark to me from my experience. But, down multiple blocks of downtown is a very different animal, of course. Okay, I think that's all my questions.
Okay, I think we might have public comment, see if there are any other questions, and then deliberate. I've got 2 yellow comment cards. If you change your mind, feel free to send one in. Mara Reynolds, do you want to hop up first, and then we'll have Andy Fisher?
Sorry, I obviously did not come here to talk about this, but my home is on that map, as is my car. I just want to point out there are private residences within that zone, as well as a church with a daycare and the post office, and what looks to be very close to the water line. As somebody living in that zone who regularly sees people interact with police for being publicly intoxicated, I would hope that that zone might be a little bit more contained itself. I think keeping it restricted to Main Street proper, even requiring shutting down the street at the same time to traffic, would be a much smarter way of approaching that.
Thank you, Mara. Andy, do you want to hop up? And Andy Fisher represents the downtown. Oh, I'm going to stop right there. I don't actually know your acronym. Yeah, I know. Why would I even say that if I can't actually do it? That's the funny part.
Yeah, I do not represent the entire community at all. I do speak as the chair for the Downtown Alliance of Milwaukie. And I can say first off, thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Council, and Chief Burdick. Thank you for just considering this. This is a huge part of what we're trying to get going in downtown. I think that there's a little bit that we could help clarify on this. None of the events that we're looking at or any of the closures that we would be looking at would be looking at the entire swath. In fact, opposite, we'd be looking for smaller quadrants of that for a lot of the events that we're looking at. The park, I know you said it's kind of a no-go, but that would be a huge part of that, including events that we're currently planning, trying to have some pathway, even if we can't do the open container, but understanding that they probably would be looking for both. That if we're doing an event, there would be downtown activity and park activity. So just for consideration there. The other part of that is there, in this, looking at it, is there any opportunity for businesses and volunteers to offset staff costs through traffic control plans, through volunteers trained as alcohol monitors, through barricade systems, block captains, that kind of approach? And if so, maybe that could help offset some of these costs. Okay. Thank you so much for considering it.
Thank you, Andy. With that, maybe Chief Burdick, do you want to respond to some of those questions, or City Manager Sager? And then we can also do final questions and deliberations after this.
I think the follow-up, especially with OLCC, is pretty critical to this, to seeing that big picture, presenting them with something very specific that they can weigh in on with some approval. Logistics of volunteers, alcohol monitors, that would be something too that if we'd have to find out what criteria that would be acceptable, or the OLCC would find acceptable. I'm sure they have some sort of metric for that. But this is a very involved and complicated project. I'm constantly, as we get into additional topics, you find out, okay, well, what's the insurance for this? Or what reimbursement rates for staff? Is it straight rate, or is it 2.5 times? All the things, if there's barriers, where do we get the barrier? I mean, there's a lot to this. So we're a ways away from coming back with a clear response.
And to piggyback on that, I mean, I think that the clearer the questions you all can give us tonight to be pursuing with OLCC and others, the better. Because I just think you're right, Chief, like there's gonna be a lot of different like rabbit holes that you can kind of go down here. I appreciate the clarification that it's not like the vision isn't whole zone or bust. But that leads me to a question then of, back to OLCC is, okay, so if you're looking at a couple blocks, but it's not really a beer garden per se. Like, what does that do? Like a fully fenced area with no traffic versus a open street that, we'll have to explore that with them. I also appreciate the clarification from Andy about, the interest in Milwaukie Bay Park as a potential, event venue. Again, there is a pathway right now for doing that. That'd be an event permit through NCPRD where they would require the higher liability insurance for alcohol. The transportation of alcohol from downtown there is an interesting one. And Chief, I can't remember, with OLCC, their concern is that like a beverage would be opened in a building and then carried out. But if alcohol were purchased on Main Street in a closed can, walked across the street to a party or to an event at the park that was permitted for alcohol and opened, that would be
Yes,
permissible.
yes.
Okay.
It gets complicated, but you hit it right on the nose.
Yeah. But again, those are things we can further explore with OLCC. But I think as council, as you deliberate and kind of provide us some direction on next steps, those specific kind of questions or ideas that you'd want us to explore would be really helpful so that we're not kind of shooting in the dark about where you'd like this to potentially go.
Okay, that's helpful. I think we can go back to the same order as you're answering. Maybe think about, just to get hopefully some guidance here. If this, one, is this a direction you think the city should head in? And two, if it's not, like explaining what could get you there, or if it is, explaining what tweaks you want, but trying to provide that clarity as you respond. I think hopefully that can make Emma's job a little bit easier. Councilor Stavanger, do you want to take it away?
Thank you. So I do have some concerns about businesses that are in the zone, and I understand the intent around making it easier for folks to be able to support those businesses while also having an open beverage container. But as a business that just went through the process of an OLCC application, and especially one that welcomes minors on a regular basis for all of our events, there are certain things that we take into account, like lighting and wristbands and capacity and all of those sorts of things that make it safer for young people to be around alcohol. And so I guess, one thing that would make it easier for me to move toward something like this would be better understanding the engagement with the businesses within the zone and what sort of checklist would be provided to them. It's easier if it's a business like ours that has already gone through the OLCC process and we already have a site map and we already have staff that have, certifications, and we have that process in place. But for other businesses that don't have that, they might be entering into a space, into this zone where their staff are then responsible for managing, alcohol on the premises in a way that they hadn't really intended.
It might be beneficial to have like an opt-out ability or something at the storefront door that denotes whether you're participating in this or, that's clearly marked no alcohol.
Yeah. Or even just some education sheets for
Okay.
businesses to say, if, this zone has been determined for an event,
Like an FAQ or something.
and these are your responsibilities. I suspect that when you get to the point of insurance underwriting, to look at permissions for things like this, they're gonna wanna be really clear about the responsibilities of private property owners and businesses that are within the zone. I think it'd be interesting to look at the idea of just the street and then figuring out what that looks like in terms of, right, finish your drink and then you can go into these shops and maybe it's time, for us to, when we get to that stage, have more of a dialogue with some of the businesses that came to speak with us the first time. Get an idea of what their thought process looks like now that we've, looked into this a little bit more.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess, I see the benefits and I also see some drawbacks, and I think you know, in our case, I'm interested in hearing some opinions from young people who are excited about, you know, being a part of an activated downtown and how they feel about having open beverages, you know, around them and drunk behavior and all that, all the stuff that comes with it. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Savender. Yeah, it's an intriguing idea. It definitely is. But for me, it draws more questions than it answers. And, you know, the one thing about downtown too is, you know, the only people that utilize downtown aren't just people that drink, right? There's families, there's children, there's different groups that utilize our downtown that may not want to be around that, may not want their children around that. And what concerns me too is access to alcohol for youth, because it's different when you're in a bar and it's a controlled environment. But the minute you walk out of that bar with that bottle, you're drunk, you're inebriated. How many times have we all been at parties and set our drink down and never returned back to it? Yeah. And a kid grabs a bottle or gets a hold of something. I mean, that's just one thing. And I know that might be a little bit more out there, but it happens, right? So I share that concern with access. I also share the concern as it pertains to our police. Right now, you know, our department is already stretched thin. We're spending excessive amounts on overtime just to cover the workload. And I think it would behoove of us to figure out how to maybe potentially fully staff our police department if we're going to consider something like this, to at least give them the appropriate tools and resources to help with something like this, because this is not a, you know, Frame just opened and look how busy that has brought. So you do something like this and you're going to bring a lot more attention to your downtown streets. And I want that attention, but just maybe not specific attention to, hey, we can get drunk on the streets of Milwaukee, right? And those are some of my biggest concerns. I don't know what would get me there. I want to hear more from OLCC. And I mean, talk about complete opposite ends of spectrums. We came from a work session where we talked about Oregon being 53rd out of 50 in substance use disorder. So now we're sitting here talking about, well, how do we increase access, right? So for me, I work in mental health as my day job. You guys have heard me say that a lot of times. Veteran mental health specific, veterans are more susceptible to substance use disorders. So what do we do for the people that need help? What do we do for the people that aren't going down there to drink and have a good time, but going down there to feed a need, to feed an addiction? What do we do about them?
Yeah.
Are we going to provide anything for them on the other side of this thing? So for me, it's a hard sell. I'd like to hear more. I'm not kiboshing the idea just because it's intriguing, and if there's ways to work things out and minimize the areas, maybe. But as of right now, this is a public safety risk. It could increase public safety issues, and we have enough public safety issues from what we heard earlier from Mara, and then also the fact that our officers are already currently stretched thin. Yeah. So that's where I stand on the topic.
Thank you. Councilor Massey?
Is this questions or is this discussion?
I think a little bit of both. If you've got questions, ask them.
Okay.
And we'd love to hear, any thoughts.
Okay. So it seems like we're twisting ourselves into a pretzel here, trying to solve a problem. And I don't know what the problem is. Yeah, I imbibe periodically, and we got Decibel, we got Freem, we got the beer store, we got more things happening. So it seems like people have a increasing number of watering holes. So I don't know what the problem is, and so I just kind of put what I appreciate the business association bringing this forward, but I just don't know, by having an open alcohol container, what kind of boost in business this might be. So, gosh, we're just kind of struggling again with this solution pretzel, and I just don't really know what the problem is.
Mayor Beatty, do you want to hop in?
Sure. I don't know why it's showing me so dark, but anyway, hopefully it'll light up in a minute. So I will say it wasn't the business association. It was Mike Lesh, the owner of the beer store, who kind of approached us first. And for those who may not have remembered or have been around for it, the beer store did do, I think 1 year or maybe 2 years pre-COVID, did do a Milwaukie Beer Fest in the farmers market parking lot. And I think maybe he was motivated by, his experience with that. Plus, he also is an active participant in First Friday. And I think there's a lot of motivation here about activating First Fridays more. So I think that's where it's coming from. In terms of the, I guess I did have one question. In the packet, there is a checklist. Where did that checklist come from? Was that from OLCC or is that something staff wrote up? It's not at all clear.
Oh, sorry, apologies. That checklist was from OLCC.
Okay, thanks. So it's surprising to me that OLCC hasn't had this issue come up more. And I guess I might be inclined to put some questions to them in writing, maybe with the help of our attorney, and get some more definitive answers. But I think, I would still be interested to hear, if we draw a maximum zone, can events just use small parts of that zone? And I guess the other question I have is whether there aren't things OLCC already permits that we could try to make easier for the businesses. So there's been a lot of references to beer gardens. And I will tell you, in my experience, when you have beer gardens, they're not all the same. Like when they did this beer festival, I think they had to put up fencing around the block. Yet when the sustainability fair has alcohol sold at the sustainability fair, they just have alcohol monitors. Or when First Friday did, they just had alcohol monitors in the lot. They did not put up fencing around the lot. I've been at beer gardens at concerts and outdoor events that were, fenced and some that weren't. So it doesn't seem to me like OLCC is necessarily always very consistent on this, but I think it would be useful to know, really ironclad, what are the expectations of a beer garden? And is there something we could do to make a beer garden something that's smaller than this zone? Say it's one intersection of downtown with, a little stubs of the, one intersection and little stubs of the street, or however it's drawn. Make a beer garden that is, that can be replicated, meaning the businesses don't have to go through an application every time they do it. It becomes like, this is the place. And, whether that's South Downtown Plaza, whether that's Farmers Market lot, although we are looking at redeveloping that. So, or whether that's some section of Main Street, is there some sort of expedited or recurring beer garden usage that could be easier for the businesses to avail themselves of? And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of questions there for OLCC. Yeah. So I'm still interested in pursuing something, but I don't know if, I don't want to spend a lot of staff time reinventing a wheel that OLCC has apparently not invented before. So if this big zone is sort of too tough a nut to crack, then let's talk about those others, those smaller kind of recurring, beer garden kind of setups.
Thank you, Mayor Beatty. Kind of like Councilor Massey, I have some questions, but they're not as much for our staff as they are for the folks who brought this idea forward. Maybe Andy or Mike, if you're able to come up, I'm just curious. Yeah, to the mayor's point, like, do you envision this as a First Friday event? Like, when would you use this? To my question earlier, would you be willing to pay $11,000 for a permit to make First Friday a little bit better? And to you, kind of what Andy was saying, what is the smallest extent that you're looking for here in a zone?
When we, Mayor Beatty's exactly right. When we first brought this to City Council, the idea was we were working with the First Friday Committee, and the problem was that people would come to a place that had alcohol and that's where they'd stay. So First Friday wasn't working out for all the businesses in downtown Milwaukee. We tried moving, originally there was a beer garden at the Milwaukee Farmers Market lot. And we tried splitting that up and moving Farmers Market down Main Street, First Friday down Main Street. And that was mixed success. So the idea was to stretch it out for businesses to be able to get people to see them, to understand that they were there, because people would come down and hang out where there was alcohol. So we said, okay, we'd been to Hood River before and we knew that it worked there because they don't have an ordinance against an open container. And just to see what we could do. This isn't something that we want to be turning into a Mardi Gras or something like that. And we don't want to turn Milwaukee into a college party town. That's not the idea whatsoever. The idea is just that you aren't anchored to a location when you purchase an alcoholic beverage. That was simply it, that you could actually go and explore. Simply that. I understand everybody's concerns. It totally makes sense. But I think the fears are about things that we work up in our minds, not something that we've actually experienced here. I worry about driving to work if somebody's going to be, I go to work at 4 a.m, my day job. I worry that somebody's going to fall asleep at the wheel, but that doesn't keep me from going to work. So there can be terrible things can happen all the time, anywhere you are. That's not to say that all of the concerns are not valid. They are very valid concerns. We have alcoholic beverages, obviously, with Beer Store. We are a community business. We want to grow this community. That's why we opened it in Milwaukee. We're from Milwaukee. We grew up here. We would love to see it like, if anybody's been to downtown McMinnville, downtown Camas, what they're doing in Troutdale. This is what we want to envision and build for Milwaukee, a place for people to come. And this was one of the ways that we could maybe put a cherry on top of that. That would be, oh, cool. I can go get a beer and I can actually walk down to the record store or to some other place. That would be amazing. That's what we're looking for. In that kind of a community, not a party community. That isn't it. So at least that was our general, when we brought it to the city council, this was our sort of vision.
I appreciate that context. That's super helpful, Mike. Any other questions for Mike before I get on my soapbox? Easy enough. Okay, thank you for coming and thank you for bringing this. As I think about this, I guess a question that I have is, like, I think this map that's been brought forward is a little too large, especially after hearing from folks. And a more narrow approach, I think, would be a better start if this is something that we actually want to pursue. I worry about committing staff time to something that will be so expensive that it will be prohibitive for people to ever use. And so I do want to caution. I think we should have a collective kind of gut check. Is this going to be something that actually would be used? Is this something we would want to be used? And is this something that is a good allocation of our staff resources? When it comes to the actual boundaries of the map, I think just doing Main Street or just doing, the mayor was saying, something like Harrison and Main limits it a little bit more in a way that might be rational. I think I'm feeling this tension where I think Mike brings up a really good point. It's a great way to get people going to more than one business. You see Freem, and we have a lot of people there. I also worry that like Freem is going to get all of our business and will harm stores that aren't Freem. You also see Freem, and they have folks who are roaming around outside, and like that is really exciting to me to see people able to like stand outside with a drink so casually. And I think to me, I look at that and I'm like, okay, that area, it's an open container area that works. It's more contained. They have little signs. I think that that's really good. And I think all of this goes well with our desire to do economic development. It's something new and innovative, and I think an exciting policy. The other thing that I feel is like similar to what Councilor Khosrowshahi is saying, like I struggle with the idea that we associate alcohol with the way that we recreate. I have parents and family, a lot of folks who are sober because of challenges with addiction. And like it is a constant refrain in groups that I spend time with that like what a challenge it is that alcohol is so pervasive in our society that it's something you have to always encounter. And I don't think that this is like necessarily going to be the policy that either solves or sinks us down into an alcohol crisis. But I do think that like it is death by a thousand cuts with the way that we see alcohol in our society. And I'm like grappling this. So I'd say that is kind of what I'm thinking. Hopefully that gives some guidance. I'm going to take a stab at what you're hearing collectively from council. Would love to hear your take, and then maybe we have people tailor it. It seems like there is, if I had to guess, it seems like there's not really a desire to move forward with this proposal, unless it's something that's much narrower in scope. And that something would be confined to a small part of the city. It might not even extend all the way down Main Street with concerns about businesses. It might just be something on Harrison and Main. And it might, to the mayor's idea, be something that's not necessarily involving a lot of staff time, coordinating with the OLCC. Maybe it's just something that is looking at improving existing policy. But I guess what I'm hearing is this approach outlined here is not something the council as a whole wants to pursue, but finding some way to address Mike's concerns and make it more accessible to do an event like this in a creative but smaller solution might be something. Is that the vibe? Let's see. Councilor Stavanger, who had their shoes up first? Okay, yeah.
So I think that's a little bit different than the way that I'm feeling tonight. I think that until we actually get guidance on a legal, insurance sort of perspective and from OLCC, then I don't think that we can really say yay or nay. I think this is a tool for economic development. It is a tool for increasing Milwaukee's presence and status as a destination. So I'm feeling that, and I'm also feeling like I got some more questions. So I think, to answer those questions means it's going to take a little bit more work. It means talking to the OLCC. It means figuring out the insurance pieces. It means figuring out whether it's like include the businesses automatically and provide an opt-out, or maybe it's an opt-in, and that opt-in is your definition of the bumps along the outline of the street. I don't know exactly what this turns out to be, but I'm interested in looking into it a little bit more.
Yeah, that's pretty much, I would agree with Councilor Stavanger's assessment, and I do want to appreciate Mr. Mike Lesh for coming up here and explaining that. And, that's a great analogy that you used about, waking up at 4 a.m. And the other side of it too is knowing that you're up that early and that there's people that could fall asleep. Do you take more risks or do you take less risks yourself? Do you drive faster to get to work or do you drive a little bit slower, right? Like, you're going to make sure that knowing that there's somebody out there that could harm you, you're going to take less risk yourself to ensure that you're not harmed. So that's the other side of it too. And I'm not saying that we can prepare for all that stuff, but there is a public safety aspect to this that we definitely have to look into. And I commend you guys for doing a lot of this work. I mean, it's a lot of work. It's not easy to present something like that. And like I said, I'm not here to kill this thing. I'm open to it. I'm just leaning a little bit farther on the other side, but I want to know more. I want to learn more. I want to hear what OLCC says. I want to look into the other cities that you mentioned as well, and to try to really see if, how this works. And again, I really, priority for me is ensuring that our police department is able to maintain this, because with that and the influx of development, the more people that are coming in, it's going to stretch our public safety services tremendously. So.
Thank God I'm not a weatherman, because I cannot tell which way the wind is blowing. I guess my one question, or maybe idea that I was having, I think there's a difference in who's putting on events that would make us a little more uncertain. And I wonder if whatever proposal we have, like if someone's applying for a permit, if this could be something that has to get council approval or would go on our consent agenda. That way, at the very least, we could review event permits and I think give us some comfort in like whatever solution we have, knowing that we have final say over approving certain things, I think might help alleviate some things. I like the cheeky smile from Councilor Stavenjord. I'll turn it to her and then I'll try and restate what we're hearing too.
Sorry. I think that the more objective we can make this process, the better. And, sometimes the deliberations that happen, up here can be more subjective. I would prefer that if we move forward with a process like this, that we make it very easy to understand and very black and white in terms of forms and approval process, and leave external deliberation out of it. Because I think then you get into a more subjective decision-making process, and that's when we get into trouble. So that's why I had that smile on my face.
I saw Councilor Massey and then Mayor Beatty.
I think I'm echoing Rebecca's smile. Yeah, I don't want to get in the business of approving these events. Okay, and I think that we have to set out the policy, the parameters, and everything like that, and we let the city staff do that. That's what we pay the city staff to do. Okay, and I just so yeah, I just don't want to get into that management of events and that kind of thing.
Mayor Beatty.
Well, I agree with that. I don't want to get into the management of approving individual applications. I think I agree with what Councilor Stavenjord said when we started this round, which was we need to know more from OLCC. I mean, she also said we need to know more about the liability and insurance. I think that may be true, but I think the first step is getting some ironclad answers from OLCC about what is possible and what is, what scales, what is possible, what is replicable on a regular basis so that it's easier, if it's first Friday, it's easier for 6 months. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every month or, reapply every month. All of those things. I think the OLCC questions are the first order of business.
Well, that was 3 no's, so that's at least clear. I think the guidance maybe that we're saying is we want to continue this conversation. We want to really get guidance from OLCC and figure out what that liability insurance might look like, the legal obligations there. I think there was some discussion about this, like boundaries themselves and what a more narrow vision might look like. And then I think overall, like a desire to make our event permitting process for these types of special events more streamlined. Is there anything that we can do as a city to help people, especially with reoccurring events, have that? Is that better guidance? Is that, I think, where we're settling? Yeah. There we go.
I think that sounds great, Council President. And the only addition I would add is, I really appreciate what Mike said about the why. And, when Councilor Master talked about the problem we're trying to solve, I think this is one cool idea that we're exploring, and we'll come back with more information from OLCC and others. I think we can talk to some of our neighboring cities too, who have like wine walks and those kinds of things, and understand a little more how they thread this needle. But this is not the only tool we have to activate Main Street. And I'm so excited about the energy we're seeing. First Friday is coming, and I think the city can do a lot to help try to, get folks to walk up and down those corridors. And I'm excited to have my staff lean in and help you guys as we do that. And we'll see how that goes too while we keep this train moving. So Sounds good.
Thank y'all for coming and for bringing this idea. This is like, I see our downtown as something that is so crowdsourced and how we've gotten to here. And it takes bold ideas and some visionaries for you all to bring something like this, to open a new business, to do all this exciting stuff. So thank you for keeping at it, and we will keep at our good government thing and plug along. With that, I think we are good to move on from this order of business unless anyone else has something they want to say. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay. We have no public hearing today, so we can move on to our council reports. Does someone want to kick it off?
Sure, I'll do it. This was a council report from the April 7th CAB meeting. I did not get the slides. They have not sent me the rest of those slides, but I'm gonna discuss this anyways because I didn't realize that we weren't gonna. It's our last meeting till the second week of May. The first week or the first after the first weekend. Excuse me. So we had a meeting and we had a couple of presentations from the Housing and Homeless Services update from Vahid Brown, who is incredible and amazing individual. Also, just to let everyone know, we did end up changing the time. I know I mentioned this before. We changed the time and the day that we meet on the CAB in hopes to get more people involved. The CAB was meeting at Wednesday morning at 7:30 to 9. It's an awful time. We now meet on Mondays from 4 to 5:30. So hoping that makes it easier for those that volunteer on the CAB, and then the population that we're there to serve can also attend these meetings as well. As far as the presentation, he just talked about some of the housing updates. There's a new development called Vela Affordable Housing Projects, about 120 units of affordable housing, and this is in the county. Vahid discussed what the county's, their continuum of care, I believe. It's building a balanced continuum, and that starts from homelessness prevention into outreach, into shelter, then to permanent housing, and then retention and stabilization. And the county's actually had quite a bit of success with a lot of this. The problem is that there's a lot of people that need help, and it's more than what the county can do. I mean, they've just in this first quarter, they've done thousands of assessments, not hundreds, thousands of assessments for people needing assistance. For example, the CHA, the Coordinated Housing Access, has done 27,366 assessments. Homelessness prevention, there's been 3,439 evictions prevented. Permanent housing, there's 1,064 households right now connected to permanent supportive housing with a 96% retention, which tells us that their program is working. The retention is key because that just determines how often people that are put into permanent supportive housing, how often it is that they stay in there. And this is 96% of them are still there after a year of being there. So that's a high success rate. 641 households placed in rapid rehousing with a 93% retention rate. Rapid rehousing is what they use to get people into housing as quickly as possible, specifically for houseless individuals. There's a lot of programming that the county is working on. They have Move Forward, which is an employment assistance, benefits recovery, and barrier removals. Advancing racial equity, that's recruitment for an inclusive community homelessness advisory board. So they're even though they got rid of the DI office in the county, the staff at the county, thankfully, is still committed to that work. Health and housing integration, that's for Medicaid demonstration waiver, community paramedic, healthcare case conferencing, behavioral health case managers. I asked a question about the federal funding because a lot of this continuum of care is funded through federal dollars. And he did say that that continuum of care is currently at risk with the cuts happening right now. Didn't really go into detail what the plan is there. And then Joey Johns, who's a social services housing individual, he went over some of the programs that the county has. And I'll stop there because I don't want to chew this up. I want to get some more information because this is really important. They have programs like Housing Our Heroes, Housing Our Families, which is 8 units of scattered sites housing, Hope 1 and Hope 2, which are 2 different programs. Hope 1 is 15 units of scattered site, and then Hope 2 is 4 units. And I don't have what each one is differentiated because we didn't have a lot of time for him to go through everything in detail. That's why I'm trying to get the slides. And then the rent well tenant education, which I know you asked about that, Councilor Massey, earlier, and that rent well is, that's, I'm kind of new with that too, but apparently that's from what they explained there, it's a pretty big deal and it does a lot of good for people. So I want to find out more about that, and what I'm trying to do is see if maybe Vahid and Mr. Joey Johns can come to a council meeting and kind of give a rundown of all these programs. And I'm sure like our library and the people that were here from behavioral health team probably have a lot of this info, but it'd just be good to have the county here just to make sure that we're covering all of that stuff. We're not missing anything because it's a lot of programming that's out there. So yeah, I'll be looking to get some more of those slides, share them to all of you, and then work on getting a second to have Vahid come back to the council.
I appreciate all the work you're doing there. Can I ask a favor? You also have been doing really good work with our neighbors at the Linwood NDA. Are you okay if we share the letter about Fernwood Park and look at that now?
Oh yeah, you want to, yeah, go ahead. Please.
And it fits on one slide.
Fantastic. Actually, you've been doing a lot of good work with all the NDAs, so don't just shine me up. Thank you. Polish on yourselves.
Okay, we've got this letter here. I took a look during the break. I think it looks good to me. I'm curious though, from our staff, what they would say and what our other counselors would say, and if this looks like something that we can put together.
Yeah, just for context, this was put together mostly by members of the NDA. I don't want to take credit for putting this together. I just looked it over and thought that I didn't have any issues with it. So it seemed pretty succinct and plain, really.
I was worried that it wasn't sort of positive enough, but if it's what they put together and put forward, then I'm fine with it. I thought, yeah, I'm fine with it.
Greg, it looks like you could have asked for more. Other comments that people have?
Throw a smiley face.
My only thought was I think there was some conversation last time about language that says like, our support does not preclude this or a future council's ability to make a different decision about something. Like, I think what they're really looking for and what I think you were looking to provide them was green light to start fundraising for something. In general, we don't have a concern about this type of amenity, but please don't assume that green light means that like you get to sail through any kind of required permitting or anything. There's still decision-making points that would be a part of any capital project like this.
Yeah, and I'm sure they're. I mean, from my understanding, from going to the meeting, they're well aware of it. This is just for, and again, the clarification I received from the NDA is just so when they approach NCPRD knows that they have the city's support to pursue a picnic covering. I mean, that's really what they need the letter for. It's not permission for them to fundraise. It's really just to when they go to NCPRD to show, hey, NCPRD, we have the city's behind. Like if they went to NCPRD without us backing them, I don't know how much NCPRD would support their project. But with us backing them, not financially, but just saying, hey, we support them putting this in, and I could see that going a little bit further in their dealings with NCPRD.
Yeah, Councilor Stavanger?
I think that the last sentence covers some of the like processy things that I was worried about. Things like, I mean, in the city's policies, we have to go through a certain process to be able to approve, amenities. So, it's not like this is a, I don't know, what, pass, go, collect $200 card. The only thing I would actually suggest adding is that we really appreciate the neighborhood associations, efforts and initiative to build community by creating a place, a sense of place, and the place building that they're doing is incredible leadership. I felt so bad after asking the questions at the beginning of this conversation, that we had with Greg, because I went straight to like, all right, we need the nuts and bolts and details and blah, blah. And like, yes, we need those, but also we need communities that are taking the initiative and starting this kind of stuff and building the community. That's the best that any city could ever ask for. So I'd really like to include something that appreciates their leadership here.
I think that sounds great. So I'm hearing consensus that after we add in this component, people are good for us all to sign on as a city.
I'm good.
Okay. Well, that sounds good. Then Scott, if you're able to format that, we would really appreciate it. And thanks for editing in real time.
And who can I send this to once it's formatted to forward to the NDA?
Councilor Koster-Abadi has been doing a great job. Yeah.
Counselor, would you please copy me when you send that off? I'd like to just keep staff involved as Greg and others start kind of, because we're still waiting to get back to them on the appropriate contact at NCPRD. So thanks.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other council reports that people have? Mayor Bates, I know you've got a letter too.
I do have a letter, but if other people have council reports, I'm happy to wait.
Robert says you're all good.
Oh, okay. Well, then maybe Scott can pull up my letter, which is longer. But I did send it around yesterday, I guess. This Bridge Meadows is a really cool program which develops housing that brings together families with kids in either in foster care or who have been adopted out of foster care, and elderly folks to create a sort of age diversity community. And there's I think their first project was in North Portland. They have a project now in Beaverton, and one in Redmond, the council president's hometown. And former mayor, current rep, Mark Gamba, was a big advocate for this. He tried to get it included in phase one of the Hillside project. It didn't make it into phase one, but I was really excited to learn that they are looking to include it in phase two of the Hillside project. So they reached out to me, the Bridge Meadow people reached out to me yesterday asking for a letter of support. I think they're also going to the county commissioners for a letter of support for this ask. As we all have heard many times, money is going to be tight in Salem this year, especially with the transportation bill. But I thought we would want to support this. So they gave me their draft of a letter. I rewrote it pretty extensively, but it did start from their letter. So I'm hoping you guys all want to sign on to this. And I'm happy to take edits if people have edits.
I'm good with it, Mary. I appreciate you sending it to us. I read it yesterday. I don't have anything to add.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yep. Took a look during our break and it looked good.
Ditto, and I appreciate this delivery technique because I think that sometimes legislators get a lot of letters, but bringing this to the floor in this form of delivery is very strategic.
I love the praise, but I hate what I'm about to say. We're giving our utility bill out on the floor, or a letter about the utility bill. But if we wanted to do a different floor letter, we could do something
womp
else.
womp.
Yep.
All right.
Well, I mean, we would give this to Bridge Meadows to use as they see fit. But I mean, when the time comes, we could try the floor gambit, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know. I think it's just an interesting way to pierce through the void of, everything that they have during this particular last phase of the legislative session.
Right,
So anyway.
right.
So I'm hearing support for formatting this, and I'll send it back to you, Mayor Beatty.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Perfect. I've got one, but Emma, if you want to go? Okay. That sounds good. My council report, I don't have much. I do want to say I was biking on one of our recent sunny days, and I thought to myself, oh, I want to check out this site on 29th Greenway. I stopped by, and lo and behold, the neighbors were all around. So we had this good conversation where I was like, this development's coming in right next to you. And they were like, yeah, we're really pissed off about it. And I was like, well, I'm one of your city councilors. And that led to like a fun discussion about 29th and what's happening there. It's really stepped in it.
Got chased out of there.
Yeah. I gave him my phone number. I gave him my home address. I have not had the house burned down yet, so that feels good. I think the real thing there is like, I'm kind of wondering, like 29th, we've heard a lot of conversation about, we've heard a request for stop signs, we've heard a request for parking. It's one of our greenways in our TSP. And so I do think that there's an opportunity to think about like, are there some small interventions we could do, a pilot for like what this road looks like as a model for our other greenways? There's a state representative who says, I'm putting a marker down on this conversation. I'd love to put a marker down and maybe follow up with any one of you who might want to see this on a work session agenda going forward.
Counselor.
Yeah, checked out early. Where are we on the enhancements that we approved previously?
I believe, I was looking at that today as we were prepping our responses to Ms. Coburn's testimony. I believe we've done the things that we discussed with you last spring after the first kind of large conversation about 29th. There was sort of a phase one of some initial signage improvements. There was a phase two that occurred with the slurry seal project. That was the implementation of green paint. There's sort of a phase three that was, as we look at larger capital improvements, the Ardenwall North project, which doesn't currently touch 29th, but kind of exploring that. And that all will happen as part of sort of the TSP conversation you heard previously and the kind of development of our next capital improvement plan project list. So there's not more in the pipeline. I'm looking at Joseph to make sure I'm not saying anything wrong, but our engineers are busy working on other projects right now and don't have additional work slated on 29th.
But in your comments on the previous meeting issues, there's a number of things that are going to come out of that, are there not?
And I will admit the jet lag is getting me, so I may not be fully remembering, but I think what I meant there was, we do ongoing maintenance on all of our roads, street sweeping, those kinds of things. We're exploring on 29th and anywhere where we have development being proposed, we look at whether there's going to be a requirement for the developer to do an improvement or whether fee lock or fee in lieu of construction would be appropriate. That'll happen. And I think the action I'm having staff take out of Ms. Coburn's testimony is to get a little clearer internally on, with fee lock money that is put forward by a development, what appropriate expenditures of that money could look like. So could that be graveling? Could that be berms? Those kinds of things. But other than waiting for that pre-app to turn into an application and then having the discussion about what we do with VLOC there, I don't think there is additional work right now slated for 29th. Joseph, am I missing something?
So I would just say there's a couple of things brewing here. And so I would be a little bit reluctant to start into yet another discussion about 29th until we've got these other issues sort of, a path, so we're not whipsawing back and forth all the time. I understand we want to get back to the constituents, and I think that we can probably put together what we're working on and provide that back to them. But I'm just a little bit concerned that we're going to be, there's a lot of activity, I think, going on already about 29th.
And I think the other part of what I said earlier was that the TSP and the conversation we had earlier about functional classifications, I mean, that will provide, when that plan is finalized and updated, I think will provide more clear policy direction for us on the types of treatments and sort of the future vision for corridors like 29th. So that's a piece of the puzzle that will lock into place later this year.
Just to clarify, so make sure I'm hearing this right. So all of the 29th Avenue Greenway enhancements that were supposed to be done are done?
Yes, that we discussed with council previously.
That's the paint that they put on the ground.
Paint and additional signage.
Yep. Well, I put my marker down. We can come back to it at some point, but I think a good conversation to have eventually, and a larger Greenway conversation as well. Emma, you've been cut off many times.
That's
Do you want to
okay.
finish off?
My non-council report, since I'm not a counselor, is just a little note that if anyone's watching, get out and support our small businesses this weekend. We believe this is another planned national boycott of large corporations. And the business of Milwaukie and DAM, I know, are doing some messaging online about how, if you want to support that, that's great. But I think it's like, boycott corporations, not community is their tagline. So we encourage you to still get out and support our small business community who are doing wonderful and amazing things here in Milwaukie.
Something other than a motion to adjourn? We'll
Yes,
entertain
it is. So for the edification of the whole council, do we want to mention what happened? And just so that they know in case they get questions.
Sure, absolutely. This is regarding what happened in Milwaukie Bay Park today? Yeah. So there were, I believe, 7 sadly deceased geese found in Milwaukie Bay Park today. We communicated with NCPRD, who communicated with ODFW. The geese have been picked up by the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. We're still inquiring with ODFW about the cause of death, and we'll be communicating to you and to the community as we learn more, and any, notices or pieces of information we need to share out about that. But if you saw any of the sadly deceased geese, please know that they have been picked up, and as of now, the park is open. The geese are no longer there.
Were they found down by the water, close to the water? Or?
They were kind of spread out.
Really?
They were kind of spread out over the
Wow.
grassy knoll, yeah.
That's weird.
Well, a sad note to end it on, but thank you for the update. We'll move out of council reports, and with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn the meeting.
I second.
Councilor Savinger moves to adjourn the meeting. Councilor Kosarbati seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion passes unanimously. With that, the meeting is adjourned.